I used to think that life had a way of rewarding those who stayed loyal and worked hard. I believed that if I played by the rules, built a solid home, treated my wife with love and kindness, stayed committed, then life would return that energy. I expected reciprocity. But life doesn't always work that way. Some betrayals don't arrive with noise and chaos. They creep in quietly, like a small fracture beneath the surface that eventually brings the entire structure down. It began on what seemed like a regular evening. I had just come home after a long, tiring day, feeling good despite the exhaustion. In my hands was takeout from Rachel's favorite place, a little gesture after putting in extra hours at work in hopes of landing a promotion that could change everything for us. I wanted her to have the best. But stepping into the house, something felt off. There was an unfamiliar scent of perfume lingering in the air, and the living room looked like it had been hastily cleaned. Rachel was sitting on the couch with her phone clutched in her hands, giving me a look that screamed she had been interrupted. She commented that I was home early. It was already 7:30 in the evening, not early by any stretch. I placed the food on the kitchen counter, ignoring the knot tightening in my stomach. "I brought your favorite. Thought we could eat together," I said. Her eyes flicked back to her phone. "I already ate," she replied without much thought. That was the first red flag. Then came the second sign, her sudden obsession with her schedule. Evenings that were once ours were now filled with vague plans involving friends or supposed work commitments. Whenever I asked to tag along, she'd come up with reasons why it wasn't possible. A week later, the third sign appeared, subtle but undeniable. One evening, while she was absorbed in her phone, she chuckled and said something that sent a chill down my spine. "Noah wouldn't say that," she laughed. I looked at her, puzzled. "Who's Noah?" I asked. Her body tensed briefly before she answered, too quickly. "Just someone from work. A friend." I tried to brush it off, convincing myself I was reading too much into things. That it was nothing. That Rachel wouldn't betray me like that. But something deep inside whispered otherwise. It was the way she pulled away from my touch. The way her expression softened when she read her phone. The gentle tone she used when she mentioned his name. I was trying to hold on, but the ground beneath me was already giving way. 2 weeks later, the truth came out. We were in the kitchen, surrounded by the comforting smell of morning coffee. I was cooking breakfast, clinging to the illusion that our life was still intact. But she sat quietly, distant, like someone who had already made up her mind but hadn't spoken the words. Finally, she did. "We need to talk," she said, setting her coffee cup down. I turned toward her, spatula in hand. "What about?" I asked. She hesitated, eyes fixed on the countertop. "I've been thinking a lot. I don't know if I'm happy anymore." Her words hit like a wave of cold air. "What does that mean?" I asked, already dreading the answer. "It means I need space. Time to figure things out." At first, I couldn't understand. Or maybe I didn't want to. "Rachel, we've been married for 5 years. You can't just wake up and question everything." But she didn't look at me when she spoke again. "I think I've already figured it out." That was the moment it all became clear. She had already made her decision. I just wasn't the choice she made. That night, I couldn't sleep. How could I? The woman I had devoted my life to had torn it apart with one sentence. Her words echoed in my head endlessly. "I think I've already figured it out." Each repetition dug deeper, cutting into me like a blade. I wanted to believe this was a temporary phase, something we could fix with a real conversation. But the way she said it, and the way she avoided my eyes, told me the truth I didn't want to face. She was already emotionally gone. The next morning, I forced myself to go through the motions. I made coffee, stuck to my routine, pretending everything was okay. Maybe I hoped that acting normal would somehow make everything fall back into place. That she would see what she was about to throw away. But nothing changed. She barely acknowledged me as she got ready for work, moving around the house like I was a ghost in our shared space. Then, just before walking out the door, she paused. For a fleeting second, I thought she might say something, anything, that would show she still cared. But all she did was sigh and murmur, "We'll talk later." That was when I truly knew where she was going. I had spent weeks brushing aside the obvious, convincing myself it was just my imagination. But that moment, that look of quiet guilt in her eyes, confirmed it. This wasn't about needing time or figuring things out. She was leaving me for someone else. I remained at the kitchen table long after she left, staring blankly at the untouched coffee cooling in front of me. My thoughts were muffled by a low hum in my ears, as if my body couldn't fully absorb the reality of what had just happened. 5 years of marriage. 5 years of building a life, dreaming of a future, sharing promises. And now it was all slipping through my hands like fine sand. But the hardest part? I couldn't even recognize who I was without her. Every decision I made, every goal I chased, had been intertwined with Rachel. Everything I had poured my energy into, my job, our house, and even my carefully mapped-out future, had always revolved around the two of us. Now she was tearing herself away from all of it, leaving me behind to piece together what came next. At some point, I can't even say when exactly, I reached for my phone and gave in to the one temptation I had managed to resist until then. I opened her social media profile. I had never been one to scroll through her posts obsessively. I trusted her. That, to me, was what being in love meant, believing in someone without constantly needing reassurance. But now, that same trust had led me to this moment, alone in a silent kitchen, wondering if the past 5 years had meant anything to her at all. As I browsed through her profile, something began to feel off. Our photos together were almost non-existent. Not just recently, completely. The last one with both of us had been posted more than a year ago. That's when I saw his name, Noah, her colleague, the man I dismissed the first time she brought him up. He was all over her posts, liking, commenting, laughing at inside jokes I had never been a part of. Then I found it. Buried in a group picture from one of those so-called work gatherings, there they were. Rachel and Noah. She wasn't wrapped around him or anything, but it didn't need to be obvious. You could see it in how she leaned in toward him, and in the way he looked at her, the kind of look that said he believed she already belonged to him. My gut twisted. For weeks, probably even months, I had been trying to convince myself it was all in my head. That Rachel was simply going through a tough time, that we could still find our way back. But that single photo made it impossible to keep pretending. She wasn't slipping away from me. She was already gone. And the cruelest part? She never even had the courage to tell me. What hurt the most wasn't that she had chosen someone else. It wasn't the deception or the quiet way she started acting like I no longer existed. No, the most painful part was waking up every day in a shared home, living our old life, while realizing that I had already been cut out of hers. Rachel was still coming back at night, but it was like she had vanished emotionally. I could sense it in the way she moved around the house, always careful, like I was just some invisible presence to avoid. She no longer brewed coffee for the two of us in the mornings, a routine that had been second nature for years. Clothes started disappearing from her closet, the ones she saved for special occasions, the kind she only wore when she wanted to look her best. And the silence between us was suffocating, filled with all the words we never dared to say. Still, I refused to be the one to bring it up. I needed her to say it out loud, to confirm what I already knew in my heart, that she had already given herself to another man. But she never did. Instead, she acted like she was doing me a favor by gradually vanishing. Her weekend visits to her mom's became more frequent. Work dinners started running late into the night. She took longer phone calls in the car instead of inside the house. She was removing me from her life piece by piece, without ever saying goodbye. And I let it happen, not because I didn't care, but because I wasn't ready to face the truth. A part of me still clung to the hope that she might wake up one day and see how much she was throwing away. That hope crumbled one evening when I followed my instincts. She had been texting nonstop, curled up on the couch with her phone practically a part of her hand. The screen's faint glow lit up her face, her expression soft, her lips forming tiny smiles, smiles I hadn't seen directed at me in a long time. I stood in the kitchen, my fingers digging into the edge of the counter, trying to keep steady. "Who are you talking to?" I asked. My voice came out low, almost detached. She looked up, clearly startled, as though she'd forgotten I was even there. Then, just as quickly, her face smoothed over into something unreadable. "Just a friend," she replied. "Noah?" I asked. A flicker crossed her expression, maybe guilt, but she shrugged it off and said, "You're just being paranoid." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But I couldn't ignore what my gut had been screaming. So when she left the room to take her important call in the bedroom, I did something I had never done before. I picked up her phone. Of course I knew her passcode. We had built our life together. We shared everything, or so I thought. My hands trembled as I unlocked the screen. And there it was. Message after message. His name right at the top, Noah. I didn't have to go through every single one. The truth hit me the moment I read just a few. "I miss you already. Last night was perfect. I wish I was in your arms right now." The words stared back at me, undeniable, destroying any lingering doubt. My vision blurred, my stomach churned. I had been lying to myself all this time. Rachel wasn't just pulling away. She had already left me behind. There's a moment when pain stops feeling like pain. It turns into something else entirely, something dull, something hollow. That's exactly what washed over me as I stood there, in the house we had shared, holding the phone that confirmed everything I had refused to see. I should have felt fury, devastation, heartbreak. In that instant, all I could feel was a heavy, suffocating silence that seemed to consume every belief I once held about our marriage. I stood there, motionless, lost in the stillness. Time had no meaning. It just slipped away unnoticed. The only sound breaking the silence was the soft murmur of her voice from the bedroom. She spoke gently into the phone, her tone reminiscent of how she used to speak to me in the early days of our love. I moved toward the doorway and stopped to watch her. She hadn't noticed me standing there, too wrapped up in him. Her back was to me, her fingers nervously twisting the bedsheet as she whispered words not meant for my ears. I can't talk much right now. No, he's home. I know. I miss you too. Then she laughed, a soft, familiar laugh that once belonged to our shared moments. That laugh now felt like a dagger. Something deep inside me broke. I stepped into the room. Who are you talking to? Rachel? Her body went rigid. For a moment, she stood frozen. Then she spun around, eyes wide, forcing composure. No one. Just a work call. I exhaled slowly, refusing to let it go. Try again. She faltered, scrambling mentally for something plausible. But her eyes drifted down and landed on the phone in my hand. Its screen still lit up. The messages still visible. All the color drained from her face. Her voice dropped to a whisper. What did you do? She sounded like I had shattered everything. The irony hit me so hard I almost laughed. What did I do? I had given her my heart. I had trusted her. I had spent years building a life with her. And now she looked at me like I had wrecked it all by discovering the truth. How long? I asked, keeping my voice steady even though I was anything but calm. She swallowed, clearly struggling. Her lips parted, maybe to deny, maybe to weave a last-minute excuse, but she knew it was useless. I already knew. A few months, she admitted, her gaze falling away from mine. A few months. That stung more than any single mistake could. This wasn't a slip-up. It was a repeated decision, a conscious choice to keep choosing someone else day after day, while still returning to our home like everything was normal. So what was your plan? I moved closer, my voice low. Just keep pretending? Keep playing the loving wife while sneaking away to him? Her eyes sparked with something guilt, irritation, maybe even resentment. I didn't mean for this to happen. I let out a cold, bitter laugh. They all say that. Her jaw tightened. I was miserable, okay? I didn't just wake up one day and decide this. It just happened. Nothing just happens, Rachel, I said. You made a decision. Over and over again. She looked away, crossing her arms like she was the victim. That's when it became clear she wasn't sorry about the betrayal or for the pain she caused. She was only sorry she got caught. That's when I understood that our marriage was already over. Whatever love had existed between us had faded the moment she let someone else step into my place. I didn't speak another word that night. There was nothing left to say. She had made her decision. No amount of discussion could reverse what she had done. I left the room quietly, moving past her, past the life we had shared, past all the moments that had once been ours. I stepped outside and sat on the porch for hours, staring at the empty street, lost in thought, trying to figure out how my life had become unrecognizable. She never followed. She didn't come to explain, to apologize, or to fight for us. She stayed inside, leaving me alone with the weight of everything. And maybe that silence, that stillness, was the answer I hadn't wanted to face. She wasn't going to fight for us, because deep down, she no longer wanted to. Her choice had already been made. By morning, I packed a bag. Not because I had a destination in mind, but because I couldn't bear to remain in that house another second. Every room felt stained by lies. The kitchen where we once shared dinners, the living room where we laughed and watched movies, the bed where we once held each other, it all felt hollow now. Like echoes of a love that had died long before I caught on. She stood in the doorway as I threw clothes into the bag. You're leaving? She asked cautiously, voice steady but careful. I didn't meet her gaze. What else is left? We could talk. A humorless chuckle escaped me. Talk? About what exactly? How you've been meeting someone else behind my back for months. How you laid next to me each night after giving yourself to him. She flinched, visibly affected. But it didn't matter anymore. She didn't have the right to hurt. I didn't want it to end like this, she said softly. Finally, I turned and really looked at her. And for the first time, I didn't see my wife. I didn't see the woman I had shared my life with. I saw someone completely unfamiliar. You ended it the moment you chose him, I replied, my voice quiet but resolute. This? This is just what's left behind. I took my bag and walked out the door. I had no idea where I was headed, and at that moment, I truly didn't care. What I did know was that I couldn't stay. I had been holding on to a marriage that no longer existed, fighting for someone who had already moved on. And now? It was finally my moment to turn away. What I couldn't have possibly anticipated was that this wouldn't mark the conclusion of our story, not by a long shot. Life, in its unpredictable way, has a tendency to pull people back together, regardless of whether they've earned it or not. The act of leaving wasn't the hardest part. It was everything that followed. When I stepped out of that house, I had no roadmap, no set destination. Just a single bag packed with clothes and a head crowded with questions I knew would never find answers. That first night, I ended up at a low-cost motel just outside the city limits. Sleep evaded me completely. How could I rest, with my thoughts endlessly cycling through every conversation, every memory, every overlooked sign from the past 12 months? Had she ever really loved me? Or had I been fooling myself all along? I lay there staring up at the ceiling, feeling as if its weight was pressing down on my chest. But somewhere in the quiet stretch of that night, a shift happened. I came to understand that I had been so consumed with the heartbreak, so wrecked by the choices she made, that I had completely forgotten about the power of my own choices. She had taken her path, now it was my turn to choose mine. With the sunrise came a decision I never expected to make. I picked up the phone and dialed the number of someone I had been avoiding for far too long, Bennett, an old friend. We had once been inseparable, but life had pushed us in different directions. I got married, he chased success, and somehow the years carried us apart. The last time we spoke, he was on the cusp of a major business venture that would send him traveling coast to coast. And now here I was, no longer the married man he used to know, but someone who had lost everything. His voice came through the line, light and amused. Well, if it isn't the ghost of my past. You never call. What's going on? Hit a midlife slump? Realized I was the cooler one all along. His words brought a faint smile, even with the heaviness in my chest. Something like that, I murmured. He picked up on my tone immediately. You sound rough, he said, dropping the playful edge. What's going on? And that was all it took. Everything spilled out, Rachel's betrayal, the months of pretending it wasn't happening, the moment I finally walked away. He didn't interrupt. He just listened, letting me get it all out. When I finished, silence lingered before he spoke. You did the right thing, he said, voice steady. It might not feel that way now, but walking out, that took strength. I sighed. Yeah, well, now I'm sitting in a rundown motel with just a bag and a broken marriage. His response came fast. Perfect. I blinked. Excuse me. It means you're untethered. And I might just have the opportunity of a lifetime for you. Bennett explained that his business was growing fast, and he needed someone reliable, someone sharp, driven, and trustworthy. Come work with me, he said. Get away from that place. Start fresh. You need this as much as I need someone who won't screw things up. It felt like a rope thrown to a drowning man. I didn't pause. I'm in. That night, I packed my things, left the motel behind, and drove across state lines. I didn't glance in the rearview mirror. The past was behind me, Rachel had moved on, and now it was time for me to create something new. What I didn't see coming was how life has a knack for circling back. As I pressed forward, leaving her in the rearview, she was on the verge of a realization she had made the wrong choice. Starting over was no simple task. For years, my identity had been tied to being Rachel's husband. Without that, I felt adrift, unsure of who I was supposed to be. But working with Bennett began to wake something in me. The job was demanding long days, early starts, high-stakes decisions that could shape the entire company's future. But I found myself thriving in the pressure. There's something about losing it all that makes you fearless. I wasn't afraid of failure anymore, because I had already tasted the worst of it. Betrayal, humiliation, sleepless nights filled with regret. Nothing could cut deeper than that. So I gave everything I had to this new chapter of my life. Initially, I was just another face in the office, quiet, learning, staying out of the spotlight. But Bennett noticed something I hadn't seen in myself for a long time. You're relentless, he told me after we closed a deal no one thought we could pull off. You're not just working hard. You're working like you've got something to prove. And maybe I did. Maybe I needed to prove to myself, and to Rachel, that I was more than the man she had left behind. That I was worth more than the role of the overlooked husband. Months rolled by, and I began climbing the ranks. I didn't just find success, I became essential. The business flourished, our partnerships grew stronger. Before I realized it, I had transformed from an employee into a cornerstone of the company. Then, everything changed. Bennett and I were on the brink of closing a deal that we had been negotiating for several months, one that would solidify our firm's place at the forefront of the industry. The stakes were sky high, and the risk was undeniable, but if we succeeded, it would be a complete game changer. I had been given the lead on negotiations, pouring weeks into relentless preparation, memorizing every point until I could run through them without thinking. The meeting unfolded in a sleek, high-end hotel conference space, the kind of place where true influence exchanged hands far from the public eye. Our counterparts were no-nonsense, sharp-edged corporate players who didn't bother with small talk. Neither did I. I entered that room with the mindset of a man with nothing left to lose and everything waiting to be won. And when I stepped out, the deal was done, one that would put us in a league of our own. As we exited, Bennett clapped me on the back and grinned. That was a masterclass. You just made us significantly wealthier, he said. That was the moment everything changed for me. I had been stuck grieving the life that fell apart, but as I stood there, triumphant, I saw it clearly. I wasn't just making it through. I was flourishing. Rachel had shattered me, yes, but in doing so, she unknowingly set me free. Just when I thought I had closed the door on that chapter forever, life had other plans. It began quietly, a late-night buzz from my phone. At first, I dismissed it, thinking I imagined it. But when I glanced at the screen, everything inside me froze. Her name, Rachel. My chest tightened instantly. After all this time, after all the destruction she left in her wake, she had the audacity to reach out? I hovered over the message, debating. Part of me wanted to delete it without a second glance. But curiosity won. I tapped it open. I heard about everything you've achieved. Can we talk? A laugh escaped me, genuine, amused, disbelieving. Of course. Now that I had built something real, now that I was finally someone she couldn't dismiss, she reappeared. But she had made her decision long ago. And this time, I held the power. I stared at her message for what felt like forever. A year earlier, I would have responded in a heartbeat. I would have hung on every word, desperate for answers. Desperate to know why she chose to walk away, why she destroyed what we had, why I was never enough. But I had evolved. That version of me didn't exist anymore. So I let the message sit there, unopened, untouched. A reminder of a life I no longer lived. I had spent far too long chasing closure, but I finally understood that closure doesn't always come in the form of words or apologies. Sometimes, it's found within, in the strength you discover while rebuilding from the ashes. I was no longer her broken husband. I had become something far more formidable. But Rachel wasn't one to accept silence. 1 week later, I found myself at an elite networking gala, surrounded by individuals who made choices that influenced entire industries. Bennett and I were engaged in a discussion about international ventures when I sensed a shift in the energy around me, a pause, a presence. I turned. She stood there. Rachel. Her appearance had changed, not just with time, but with the weight of regret. The air of confidence she once wore like armor had been replaced with something far more brittle. There was hesitation in her eyes, and a sadness that hadn't been there before. Hey, she said softly, like we were just two old acquaintances reconnecting. I tilted my head slightly, examining her. Rachel. She let out a small, uneasy laugh and smoothed the fabric of her dress. I wasn't sure you'd even be willing to speak to me. Why would I be? I replied, my tone even. She shifted from one foot to the other. I heard about what you've done, who you are now. I needed to see you. I waited, because we both knew that wasn't the full truth. Eventually, she spoke again, quieter this time. I made a mistake. A bitter laugh rose in my chest. Which one? Her expression wavered, just for a second, before she steadied herself. Noah wasn't who I believed he was. He walked away, said he didn't want anything long-term. And I looked at where I ended up, at what I let go of, and You realized you let go of something irreplaceable, I said, cutting in. She exhaled sharply, her eyes shimmering. I was foolish. I thought I needed more, but what I truly needed was you. I leaned in a little closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. You had me once, Rachel, but you chose to walk away. Desperation flickered in her gaze. I know, and I regret it every day. She reached out slightly, as if to make contact, but I took a step back. We could try again, she pleaded. Just one dinner. One honest conversation. I just want a place in your life again. For the briefest moment, I felt a twinge of sympathy. Almost. But then I remembered those lonely nights, the doubt that ate away at me, the way she would smile at her phone, completely oblivious to the damage she was causing. And it hit me, this wasn't about love. She wasn't here because of what we had. She was here because she lost. My smile was slow and deliberate. You don't get to be part of my life anymore, Rachel. She gasped softly. You made your decision. Now you have to live with it. And with that, I walked away. No rage. No sorrow. Just the calm triumph of a man who had finally won.